My name is Claire Whitmore, and I was 35 years old when my husband took me to our anniversary dinner, stood under a chandelier at the most expensive restaurant in Cedar Lake, and proposed to my younger sister with my dead mother's ring. Not a ring that looked like my mother's ring. Not a similar ring. Her ring. The small oval diamond with the tiny chip near the left prong, the one my mother used to twist when she was worried. The one she pressed into my palm from a hospital bed with a blue velvet box and a handwritten note tucked underneath it. My husband, Evan Mercer, held that ring between two fingers like it was a prop in a beautiful scene. My sister, Marissa, covered her mouth and cried like a woman being chosen by fate. My father stood behind them with one hand over his heart, as if he was watching something sacred instead of something stolen. And beside my untouched plate, there was a bill for $7,860 that had been charged to my anniversary card. That was the part they forgot about me. They remembered that I was calm. They remembered that I did not like scenes. They remembered that I had spent most of my life swallowing the sharp edge of other people's decisions so the room could stay peaceful. But they forgot that calm women still know how to read receipts. They forgot that I had spent 11 years working insurance claims, which meant I knew the difference between an accident, a pattern, and fraud. And they forgot that my mother had not just left me a ring. She had left me proof. Before we go deeper, welcome back to Hush and Tell Stories. If you have ever been expected to stay quiet because the people hurting you did it in public, this story is for you. If your family used something your mother left you to humiliate you, would you ever sit at their table again? Leave that answer in the comments and subscribe if stories like this help you feel less alone. I grew up in Cedar Lake, Ohio, in a pale yellow house with a cracked brick porch, a maple tree that dropped leaves into the gutters every fall, and a family rule nobody ever said out loud. Marissa needed grace. Claire needed to understand. That was how my childhood worked. Marissa was 4 years younger than me and somehow always younger than she was. Too little to apologize. Too sensitive to correct. Too fragile to repay money. At 31, apparently too wounded to avoid sleeping with my husband. My mother, Ellen, saw more than she said. My father, Grant, taught the family how to rearrange reality around Marissa's feelings. When I was 17, I worked weekends at Hartley Pharmacy, saving for a used car because my father said independence built character. That same year, Marissa backed his truck into a mailbox, cried in the driveway, and had her repair bill paid before dinner. I remember standing at the kitchen sink in my pharmacy polo while my father said, "Your sister doesn't land on her feet the way you do, Claire. You have to stop making everything a scoreboard." I did not say anything. That became my talent. That was our family pattern. My life was treated like a staircase. Useful, stable, something everyone stepped on without looking down. Marissa's life was treated like a candle. Always flickering, always in danger, always needing every hand in the room cupped around it. My mother was the only person who sometimes noticed the difference. She would find me in the laundry room or on the back porch and say, "You know I see you, right?" I would smile because it was easier than crying. "I know, Mom." But sometimes being seen quietly does not repair being erased loudly. My mother got sick the winter I turned 32. Ovarian cancer. Stage 3 when they found it. She had always been the kind of woman who knew where every receipt was, who saved twist ties in a kitchen drawer, who wrote birthdays on a paper calendar even after everyone else used phones. Illness made her smaller, but it did not make her vague. She knew exactly what she wanted. During one of her last hospital stays, while my father was downstairs getting coffee and Marissa was in the hallway taking a selfie with a caption about grief and strength, my mother asked me to close the door. Her room smelled like antiseptic, peppermint lotion, and the paper cup of ice chips melting by her bed. "Claire," she said, "open my purse." I thought she wanted lip balm. She always wanted lip balm. Instead, she told me to take out a blue velvet ring box from the inside pocket. I knew that box. I had seen it on her dresser when I was little. My parents did not have a storybook marriage, but that ring had been part of my mother before it was part of any marriage. Her grandmother's diamond had been reset into it. It had passed through women who survived quiet things. I held the box, and my mother reached for my wrist. Her fingers were thin by then, too thin. "This is yours," she said. "Mom, don't." "No, listen. To me, this is yours, not because you are oldest, not because you earned pain like some kind of prize, because you protected the quiet parts of this family." I started crying then, but softly, because hospitals make you cry softly. She slid a folded piece of paper from under her pillow. On it, in her familiar narrow handwriting, she had written that the ring was to go to me, Claire Elise Whitmore, as a personal item outside the shared household property. She had dated it, signed it, and had 2 nurses witness it because my mother thought of things like that. Then she looked at me and said, "Don't let them turn your softness into permission." Those were the last clear words she ever said to me. After she died, my father became a man made of schedules. Funeral home at 10, caterer at 1, thank you cards by Friday. Marissa collapsed enough for everyone. At the funeral, she wore my mother's pearl earrings without asking. I noticed. My father noticed me noticing and gave me a look that said not today, so I said nothing. One afternoon, while we were in my parents' bedroom sorting mom's sweaters, Marissa picked up the blue velvet box from my tote where I had set it beside my keys. "What's this?" she asked. "My ring from Mom." She opened it. Her face changed. Marissa had always had a way of looking at something someone else had and making the room feel cruel for not giving it to her. "She gave you her ring." "Yes, when?" "At the hospital." She looked at my father, who was standing by the closet holding a stack of hangers. "Dad, did you know that?" He looked tired. He always looked tired when fairness required energy. "Your mother had a lot of thoughts near the end," he said. That sentence stayed with me. Not decisions, not wishes, thoughts. I put the ring box back in my bag and zipped it closed. Marissa cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes. When she came out, my father asked me if I could avoid wearing the ring around her for a while because grief made people tender. I said it was Mom's wish. He said, "And your sister is still your sister." That was the first time I understood that my mother had known something I did not want to know. That the ring would not just be an heirloom. It would be a test. I met Evan Mercer the following spring at a charity luncheon for a children's clinic where my company had a sponsorship table. He was handsome in the way men are handsome when they have practiced being listened to. Dark blonde hair, easy smile, the kind of laugh that made people around him feel chosen for making him happy. He worked in real estate consulting, which I later learned could mean everything from market analysis to convincing small investors to fund projects he did not fully understand. But that day, he spoke about revitalizing old downtown buildings and creating spaces where families could gather. I was tired and lonely and still carrying grief like a purse with broken straps. When he asked for my number, I said yes. Evan liked that I was steady. He said it often. "You make life feel manageable," he told me on our 4th date. At the time, I thought it was a compliment. It took me years to hear the other meaning. Steady meant I made appointments, remembered bills, read leases, and fixed the things he preferred to call details. Once, about 6 months before we married, I found him rehearsing a pitch in our bathroom mirror, while I was at the dining table, highlighting overdue invoices. He came out smiling and kissed the top of my head. "You're good at the boring parts," he said. "That's why we work." There are some sentences you only understand after they break your life open. We got married in a small ceremony at the Cedar Lake Botanical House. My mother was gone by then, so I tied a tiny piece of her blue scarf around my bouquet. I did not wear her ring. I kept it in the velvet box in a small fireproof safe in our bedroom closet, along with her letter, my birth certificate, tax files, and our house documents. My father walked me down the aisle and cried just enough for people to call it beautiful. Marissa was my maid of honor. She gave a speech about how I had always been the strong one, how I had carried the family, how she hoped Evan would finally give me someone to lean on. Everyone clapped. I should have heard the warning inside it. Even in her blessing, I was useful. For the first 2 years, our marriage looked good from the outside. Evan was charming at dinner parties, remembered flowers on birthdays, and posted pictures of us with captions like "my anchor" and "my home." I had always wanted to be loved gently, and for a while, I mistook being relied on for being cherished. Then his deals got bigger and less certain. He started using words like bridge capital and private investors. I did not mind ambition. I minded vagueness. Whenever I asked direct questions, he made me feel small for needing direct answers. "You and your paperwork," he I'd say. After my mother died, Marissa's life became a series of fresh starts. Every time one ended, my father called me. "Your sister needs family right now." Family usually meant me cooking dinner, listening, pretending Marissa had not made choices, only survived them. The year before the anniversary dinner, Marissa moved back to Cedar Lake for good. She rented a small apartment 10 minutes from us and came over often, first on Sundays, then randomly during the week. She said our house felt peaceful. At first, I was glad. I thought maybe adulthood had finally made room for both of us. Then I walked in from the laundry room one evening and found Marissa wearing my gray linen apron, stirring sauce while Evan opened a bottle of wine behind her. It was not intimate enough to accuse. That was the problem. Betrayal often comes in wearing a familiar sweater, saying it is just helping. After that, Marissa started texting Evan for advice about credit, apartment leases, and job applications. One night, his phone lit up while he was in the shower. "Marissa, you explain things without making me feel stupid." When he came out, I asked why my sister was texting him at 10:43 at night. "She's embarrassed to ask you money questions because you get intense." "I get accurate." "Same thing sometimes." I said, "Please keep boundaries with my sister." He put both hands on my shoulders and said, "Of course." Then he kissed me like affection could close a file. It could not. The first paper clue came in March, 6 months before our anniversary. Evan set a loan packet on the breakfast bar while I was packing my lunch. It had yellow sticky tabs on several pages and a blue paperclip on the top. "I need you to look at something," he said. I wiped my hands on a towel and opened it. Short-term bridge loan, $72,400. Borrower contribution, spousal acknowledgement, home equity support letter. I looked up. "What is this?" "A temporary bridge for the warehouse project." "Temporary using what?" "Our equity position." I closed the packet halfway. "Evan." He sighed like I had already disappointed him. "It's not debt if it's leverage, Claire. Please don't embarrass me by treating this like a coupon folder." I stared at him. There are insults that come dressed as jokes, but you still feel the blade. I asked for the full project documents, investor names, repayment terms, and confirmation that no lien would attach to our home without my direct consent. He said I was being adversarial. I said I was being married. He did not ask me to sign that day. He took the packet back and said he would have his attorney clean it up so it did not look so intimidating. I thought the issue had paused. Now I believe he realized I would not be easy to trick while I was paying attention. So he made sure I was looking somewhere else. In April, my father started inviting Evan to lunch without me. He said he liked having another man in the family to talk business with. I thought that was strange because my father had never cared for Evan's industry before, but I was trying not to be suspicious of every shift. In May, Marissa got a job as a client relations assistant at a staging company that worked with real estate agents. Evan said that was good for her. My father said maybe she had finally found her lane. Marissa said Evan had helped polish her resume. He had not mentioned that. When I asked him, he said, "Claire, I help people. That's what networking is." By August, my father asked me, very casually, whether my mother's ring was insured. Why? I asked. Just thinking about your mother's things. Some items have gone up in value. It's in my safe. Your sister still feels hurt about that. About Mom leaving me something. About how it was handled. It was handled by Mom. He put down the wrench he had been holding. Your mother was sick, Claire. I felt something cold move through me. She was clear. He did not answer. That night I checked the safe. The ring was there. The letter was there. I took pictures of both on my phone, not because I expected theft, but because documentation is how I sleep at night. That one small act saved me later. Our 9th wedding anniversary fell on a Friday in September. Evan told me he had booked a table at Lark and Hollow, a restaurant we had never tried because it was the kind of place where the menu did not have dollar signs, just confidence. I was surprised. We had been tense for months, not fighting exactly. Evan did not like open conflict. He preferred warmth with locked doors behind it. He had been affectionate in flashes, distant in stretches, and unusually interested in whether I had plans after work that Friday. Dress up, he said that morning, adjusting his cuff links in our bedroom mirror. I want tonight to feel memorable. I thought maybe he was trying. That is the cruelest part of some betrayals. They see your hope as transportation. I wore a navy wrap dress my mother had once said made me look like I trusted myself. I curled my hair, put on small pearl earrings, and almost wore her ring on a chain under my dress. But I decided not to. I told myself the night was about my marriage, not my grief. When we arrived at Lark and Hollow, the hostess looked at Evan and said, "The private dining room is ready." I stopped walking. Private dining room. Evan squeezed my hand. Surprise. I smiled because there were people around, and I had been trained by people around. The room was at the back, separated by glass doors and velvet curtains. There were flowers, candles, a small dessert stand, and 12 place settings. 12, not 2. My father stood near the window. Marissa stood beside him in a cream satin dress. My Aunt Linda was there, Evan's friend Kyle, 2 couples from his investor circle, and in the corner, adjusting a lens, was a photographer. I looked at Evan. He smiled too brightly. I wanted to celebrate the people who made us who we are. Then my father kissed my cheek and whispered, "Try not to make tonight hard. Your sister deserves one clean moment." My sister deserves. At my anniversary dinner. That was when I saw the place cards. Cream cardstock, gold ink, Mr. Evan Mercer, Mrs. Claire Mercer, Grant Whitmore, Marissa Whitmore. And at the far end, near Evan's chair, one card read, Marissa Mercer. Not Whitmore. Mercer, my hands went cold. I looked at Marissa, she looked away. Dinner began like a play where everyone had lines except me. Evan toasted our marriage. My father toasted forgiveness, though nobody had named a wound. Marissa dabbed at her eyes twice before anything emotional happened. The photographer kept lifting his camera whenever Evan touched her shoulder. Halfway through the main course, Evan stood. He tapped his glass. "Everyone," he said, "thank you for being here tonight. 9 years ago, Claire and I made promises that changed my life. Claire taught me what commitment looked like." People smiled at me. For one second, I thought perhaps the dread in my body was wrong. Then Evan turned toward my sister. "But Marissa taught me what love felt like." The room went silent, but not shocked silent. Prepared silent. Evan stepped toward Marissa. My father lowered his head. Aunt Linda pressed a napkin to her lips. Kyle grinned like a man watching a risky investment pay off. Evan reached into his jacket pocket. I saw the blue velvet box before I saw the ring. My blue velvet box. My mother's box. He opened it, lowered himself to one knee, and said, "Marissa, I know this started in a way nobody planned, but I believe love can come out of broken places. Will you marry me?" My sister covered her mouth. The diamond caught the chandelier light. For a moment, I did not hear anything. Not the gasp from someone near the wall, not the camera clicking, not Evan's breathing, not my father saying, quietly but firmly, "Claire, sit down." I was already sitting. That was the almost funny part. My body had gone still, not wild. Marissa whispered yes. Evan slid my mother's ring onto her finger. People clapped, not everyone but enough. My anniversary card sat beside my plate, unopened. The envelope had my name on it in Evan's handwriting. Later, I would wonder what he had written inside. An apology, a thank you, a script for how he expected me to behave. Marissa turned toward me with tears shining on her face. "Please don't ruin the first good thing that ever chose me," she said. That sentence broke something cleanly. Not loudly, cleanly. I looked at my father. He did not look ashamed. He looked worried that I might embarrass him. Evan stood and started speaking again, something about honesty and new beginnings and complicated hearts. I did not listen. I looked at my sister's hand. I looked at my mother's ring. I looked at the photographer's camera. I looked at the server near the doorway holding a leather bill folder. Then I understood the second trap. The bill, Evan had booked the room under my anniversary card. We had one card we used for special dinners and travel points. It was in my name, with him as an authorized user. I had seen the reservation confirmation flash across my email earlier that week, but I had not opened it because Evan said he handled the evening. Handled, that word still tastes bitter. I stood slowly. My father took one step toward me. "Claire," he said low, "be careful." I looked at him and said, "I am." Then I turned to the server. "Could I please speak to the manager?" Evan blinked. "Claire, not now." I did not raise my voice. "I'm not speaking to you." The manager, a woman in her 40s named Rebecca, came in with professional calm and restaurant eyes, the kind that see everything without reacting to most of it. I said, "I need a copy of the private room contract, the itemized bill, and the authoriza. Tian record for the card on file." Evan laughed once. A thin laugh. "This is ridiculous." I looked at Rebecca. "The reservation is under my card, correct?" She hesitated, then said, "The cardholder name is Claire Mercer." I nodded. "Then I'd like documentation before any final approval is processed." Marissa whispered, "Oh my God." My father said, "This is not the time to nickel and dime your pain." I looked at the flowers, the candles, the photographer, the ring on my sister's finger. $7,000 is not a nickel, I said. Rebecca asked me to step just outside the room. Evan tried to follow. I turned around and said, "No." That one word surprised him more than screaming would have. In the hallway, Rebecca handed me a preliminary itemization. Private room fee, custom menu, wine pairing, floral arrangement, photography coordination, dessert service, service charge, tax. Total estimated charge, $7,860. "Has the final charge been run?" I asked. "Not yet," Rebecca said. "There was an authorization hold. Do not run it without my signature." She nodded. Then she lowered her voice. "Do you need help leaving?" That almost made me cry, because a stranger had asked me something my family had not. I said yes, but first I need copies. She printed them in the small office behind the host's stand. I signed only a receipt copy request, not the final bill approval. Then I walked back into the room. Everyone looked at me like I had returned to my own execution. I picked up my purse. Evan said, "Claire, can we please talk like adults?" I looked at my sister's hand. "We will," I said, "but not in a room you rented with my card." Then I walked out. No thrown wine, no screaming. Just my heels on the polished floor and the first clean breath I had taken all night. I drove home with the restaurant folder on the passenger seat. Halfway there, my phone began lighting up. Evan, Dad, Marissa, Aunt Linda, Evan again. Then a text from my father. "Do not punish your sister because your marriage failed privately." I pulled into a grocery store parking lot and sat under the white glare of a security light. My marriage failed privately. That was how he had already written the story. Not theft, not betrayal, not conspiracy. a private failure that Marissa had somehow survived into love. I did not respond. At home, the house looked the same in that insulting way houses do after your life changes. Evan's running shoes were crooked by the entry bench. I walked straight to the bedroom closet and opened the safe. Tax folder, birth certificate envelope, house deed copy, my mother's scarf. The blue velvet box was there. I opened it, empty. The small ring indentation was still pressed into the satin. The letter was gone. I checked every folder, nothing. Then I saw a white legal-size folder I did not recognize, tucked behind our homeowner's insurance policy. Inside were photocopies. Mortgage statement, property valuation, a draft equity support letter, a bridge loan revision, a proposed operating agreement for something called Mercer Row Holdings. And there, on page 6, under projected management and beneficiary interest, was Marissa Whitmore. Not as a consultant, not as an employee, as future spouse of principal borrower. Future spouse. The date on the draft was 6 weeks before the dinner. My husband had not proposed impulsively. My sister had not stumbled into love. My father had not been surprised. They had built a paper world where I was already removed before anyone had the decency to tell me I was being replaced. The $72,400 bridge loan was there too, revised with language about marital residence equity and spousal cooperation. Spousal cooperation. That meant me. I sat on the closet floor with the empty ring box in one hand and the loan packet in the other. For a few minutes, grief came for me without manners. I cried then. Hard, not the beautiful kind of crying people understand. The ugly, silent kind where your whole face hurts and you press your fist against your mouth, because even alone you are still trying not to make trouble. I cried for my mother's hand pushing that box across a hospital tray, for every dinner where I cooked for people who were measuring how to take from me, and for the fact that my father had not merely failed to protect me. He had helped them predict me. Then I stood up, washed my face, and did what I know how to do. I made a file. I took pictures of the empty ring box. I photographed every page in the folder. I forwarded the restaurant documents to my personal email. I changed the passwords on my bank, card, phone account, cloud storage, and home security app. I froze the anniversary card. I checked our joint account and saw 2 recent withdrawals I did not recognize, $3,000 and $1,200, both labeled consulting reimbursement. Then, I opened my photos from August. There it was. The ring in the box, the letter, my mother's handwriting, the 2 witness signatures. My mother had left proof. And because I had learned from years of being told I was dramatic, I had learned to keep evidence quiet until it was needed. At 2:16 in the morning, Evan came home. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of water and nothing else visible. "Where is my mother's letter?" I asked. Not "where were you," not "how could you." "Where is my mother's letter?" His face changed just enough. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." He dropped his keys in the bowl by the door. "Claire, tonight was mishandled. That is a word for burnt appetizers, not for proposing to my sister with stolen property." "Stolen? Your mother was Marissa's mother too." "My mother gave the ring to me." "Your mother was dying." There it was again, the family script. Sick meant unclear, dead meant available, Claire meant negotiable. I asked, "Did my father give you the letter or did you take it?" "You are focusing on the wrong thing." "No," I said, "I'm focusing on the first crime." He stepped closer. "If you make this legal, you will destroy your family." I said, "No. I think my family made it legal when they turned my signature into a business plan." His eyes sharpened. "What did you find?" I stood, enough. He slept in the guest room. I did not sleep at all. At 7:30 the next morning, I called Nadine Porter, my mother's estate attorney. She was a compact woman with silver hair, navy glasses, and the kind of quiet authority that made people sit up straighter. Her assistant said she had a 10 o'clock cancellation. I was in her office at 9:48. Nadine listened without interrupting. I laid the empty ring box on her desk, then the restaurant invoice, then my photos of the loan documents. Finally, I showed her the picture of my mother's handwritten letter. Nadine took off her glasses when she saw it. "I remember this," she said. My hands tightened around my purse strap. "You do?" "Yes. Your mother asked me to scan a copy into her estate file after the hospital social worker called me. She said she wanted no confusion later." For the first time since the proposal, I felt air move all the way into my lungs. Nadine turns to her computer. People steal originals because they forget lawyers keep copies. I almost cried again, but this time for a different reason. She printed the scanned letter on heavy white paper. At the top was my mother's name, Ellen Whitmore, personal property designation, the ring described in detail, oval diamond, yellow gold band, heirloom reset from maternal line, gifted to Clara Lise Whitmore. Nadine also printed the intake note from the hospital call and the witness confirmation. Then she looked at the loan documents. "Did you sign anything?" "No." "Did you verbally authorize use of home equity?" "No." "Did anyone ask you to appear before a notary?" "No." Good. That one word felt like a door locking behind me and another opening in front. Nadine explained that the ring had strong documentation and the financial documents needed to be blocked immediately. She called a title officer she trusted, Sandra Vale. By noon, Sandra had found a preliminary inquiry connected to Mercer Row Holdings. No lien had been filed yet, no loan had closed, but an unsigned spousal consent form was waiting in the packet. Waiting for me. Or for someone to make it look like me. Sandra emailed a formal notice stating that no documents connected to the marital residence or my credit could proceed without direct, verified consent. I printed that too. Now the file had shape. Ring letter, restaurant invoice, loan packet, title notice. But the one thing I still did not have was intent. Proof that they knew this would hurt me and planned around my silence. That came from someone I never expected. At 4:36 that afternoon, I got a text from Evan's cousin, Tessa. Tessa was not close to me, but she had always been kind in the quiet way people are when they do not want to get involved, but still know right from wrong. Her message said, "Claire, I'm sorry. Kyle added me to a chat by mistake 2 weeks ago and then removed me. I took screenshots because it felt wrong. You deserve to know." Then 8 images came through. A separate group chat called New Beginning Dinner. I sat down before I opened them. "Evan, I need it to feel respectful, not like betrayal." "Marissa, she'll still make herself the victim." "Grant, do it in public. Claire won't make a scene where people can film her." "Kyle, private room helps. Controlled audience." "Marissa, Dad, are you sure about the ring? She'll say Mom gave it to her." "Grant, your mother would have wanted both daughters happy." "Evan, the ring makes it real. Investors like stability." "Marissa, I don't want to start my life with him where?" "Ing her leftovers." "Grant, then stop calling it hers." I put the phone down. The worst part was how calmly they had discussed the best way to make me absorb it. Not one person had asked whether I would survive the humiliation. They only asked whether I would interrupt it. Tessa sent one more screenshot. "Evan, once Claire sees everyone supports us, she'll sign the transition docs. She cares too much about looking bitter." Transition docs. That was the phrase. Not divorce, not separation, transition. Like I was a tenant being moved out of a renovated apartment. I forwarded every screenshot to Nadine, then I backed them up twice. Evan texted me all day. First apologetic, then practical, then irritated. "We need to talk. You can't freeze the card without warning me." Marissa is devastated. "Your dad says Sunday dinner would help." That last message came at 6:12. Sunday dinner. My father wanted me to come to his house 2 days after watching my husband propose to my sister. He wanted to put me at his dining table under my mother's framed watercolor prints and ask me to be reasonable. I called Nadine. They invited me to a repair dinner, I said. She was quiet for a moment. Do you want to go? No, that is a complete answer. I know, but I think I need to. Why? Because they chose witnesses when they humiliated me. I want witnesses when the truth arrives. Nadine did not tell me I was wrong. She said, then we do it carefully. Carefully meant no threats, no emotional speeches that could be twisted into instability, and no negotiating alone. Nadine would attend as my legal representative. Sandra would send the title notice. Rebecca would email the invoice and card authorization record. Tessa agreed that her screenshots could be used if needed. I spent Saturday in a strange quiet. Evan packed a suitcase and said he was staying with Kyle until I could be civil. Civil, that word had done so much work in my life. Civil meant do not tell the truth too loudly. Civil meant bleed neatly. When he reached the door, he turned back. I loved you, Claire. I looked at him. No, I said, you loved being trusted by me. He did not have an answer for that. Sunday came gray and humid. I dressed simply, black slacks, ivory blouse, my mother's pearl studs. Nadine picked me up at 2:45. She had the file box on the back seat. Once we arrive, she said, you do not answer questions designed to provoke you. If your father appeals to family, bring it back to property and consent. If your husband appeals to love, bring it back to conduct. I looked out the window as the streets I grew up on slid past. What if my sister cries? Nadine glanced at me. Then let her. My father's house looked exactly as it always had. Hanging fern on the porch. Brass knocker. The maple tree, older and whiter now, dropping little green helicopters onto the front walk. For a second, I saw my mother in the doorway the way she used to be, wiping her hands on a dish towel, calling me honey. Then the door opened, and my father stood there. He looked at Nadine first. His face tightened. Claire, this was supposed to be family. I said, it is. Nadine stepped forward and held out her hand. Grant, he did not shake it. Inside, the dining room table was set for 6. Evan was there in a pale blue shirt, trying to look tired and noble. Marissa sat beside him, wearing my mother's ring. My mother's ring. On her hand. At my mother's table. Aunt Linda was there too, probably invited as a soft witness. My father's neighbor, Mr. Callahan, stood awkwardly near the sideboard with a casserole dish. He had known my mother for 30 years. I do not think he understood what he had walked into. Good, I thought. Let someone unprepared see what prepared people do. Marissa looked at Nadine and said, seriously. Nadine said, yes. My father gestured toward the table. Everyone sit down. We are not turning this into court. I remained standing. No, we're turning it into a record. Evan closed his eyes. Claire, I opened the file box. I had imagined this moment 100 times, but when it came, I felt almost peaceful. Because truth, once organized, is heavier than performance. I laid 5 papers in a straight line across my father's dining table. The restaurant invoice. The photograph of the empty ring box. My mother's scanned letter. The bridge loan documents. The group chat screenshots. Then I placed Sandra Vale's title notice beside them. Marissa stared at the papers like they were insects. My father said, what is this? I looked at him, evidence. Aunt Linda whispered, oh, Claire. I did not look at her. I picked up the restaurant invoice first. On Friday night, Evan booked a private dining room at Lark and Hollow under a card in my name. The estimated charge was $7,860. The room was used to stage a proposal to my S. Easter, during what I was told, was my anniversary dinner. Evan leaned forward. I was going to reimburse you. When? I asked. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I turned the invoice so my father could see the cardholder line. I did not authorize the final charge. The restaurant has the record. My father's jaw worked. Money can be handled. Yes, I said, that is why I'm handling it. Then I picked up the photograph of the empty ring box. This box was in my safe. The ring was removed without my permission. The original letter from Mom was removed as well. Marissa's face went red. I didn't steal anything. I looked at her hand. You are wearing the item. She curled her fingers inward. Dad said Mom would have wanted me to have it. Nadine spoke for the first time. Ellen did not leave that question open. She picked up the scanned letter. My father took a step forward. Nadine, this is family business. No, Nadine said, this is Ellen's written instruction. Then she read it aloud. Every word. My mother's name, my name, the ring description, the sentence about personal property, the date, the witness names. The room changed while she read, not dramatically, just the slow collapse of the story they had been standing inside. Marissa started crying halfway through. Evan looked at the floor. My father stared at the paper like if he hated it hard enough, it might become less real. When Nadine finished, I said, You didn't propose with my mother's ring. You proposed with evidence. Marissa snapped, That is such a cruel thing to say. I looked at her. No, Cruel was wearing it. My father finally found his voice. Your mother loved both of you. Yes, I said, and still chose where her ring went. Love did not make her property communal. Evan stood. I made a terrible mistake, I admit that, but turning this into a legal ambush is not who you are. I almost smiled. There it was. The final attempt to use my identity against me. I picked up the bridge loan packet. This is also who I am. The person whose home equity appears in a $72,400 bridge loan packet connected to your company, with Marissa listed as future spouse of principal borrower. Aunt Linda made a small sound. Mr. Callahan looked at Evan, as if seeing him properly for the first time. Evan's face hardened. That was a draft. A draft waiting for spousal consent. No one forged anything. I did not say forged, I said waiting. Nadine placed Sandra's notice on top of the packet. No lender or title office connected to this preliminary file may proceed using Claire's credit, residence, or implied consent without direct verification. That notice is already in writing. Marissa looked at Evan. You said she just needed to sign transition papers. The whole room heard it. Transition papers. Evan turned toward her sharply. Marissa, I picked up the screenshots. Thank you for introducing the phrase. My father said, Where did you get those? I read his own words aloud. Do it in public. Claire won't make a scene where people can film her. His face went gray. Now his own sentence sat on the table, stripped of tone and excuse. I read the next one. The ring makes it real. Investors like stability. Evan said, That's out of context. Nadine looked at him. What context improves it? He said nothing. Then I read Marissa's line. I don't want to start my life with him wearing her leftovers. Marissa sobbed. I was upset. You were engaged, I said, apparently before the proposal. My father slammed his hand on the table. That is enough. The room went still. I turned to him. No, enough was Friday night. This is after. He pointed at the papers. You are humiliating your sister. I looked around the dining room. My mother's china cabinet, her curtains, the table where I had done homework, paid bills, and addressed funeral thank you cards. Then I looked at him. You helped my husband humiliate me at my anniversary dinner, so I would be too proud to protect myself. Do not ask me to make your shame quieter than your plan. For the first time in my life, my father had no sentence ready. Marissa slowly pulled the ring from her finger. It seemed to hurt her, though not in any way I felt responsible for. She held it out toward me. I did not take it from her hand. Nadine slid a folded white napkin across the table. Place it there, she said. Marissa looked insulted. Nadine did not blink. Please. My sister placed my mother's ring on the napkin. It made the smallest sound. A soft tap. That was the sound of something coming home, without apology. Evan moved toward me. Claire, don't turn one terrible night into the end of a marriage. I looked at him for a long moment. There had been a time when that face could undo me. A tired Evan, a sorry Evan, a charming Evan, a wounded Evan. He had so many versions, and all of them knew how to ask for one more chance, without naming what he had done with the last one. It was the end before I arrived, I said. You just rented a room for it. Marissa whispered, I love him. I believed her. That may surprise you. I believed she loved him in the way she loved many things. Urgently, selfishly, with no respect for what had to be destroyed to make room for her wanting. I said, then love him without my ring, my credit, my house, my card, or my silence. My father sat down heavily. He looked older than he had at the beginning of the dinner. Not sorry, not yet, just older. Aunt Linda wiped her eyes and said, Grant, what were you thinking? He looked at her like betrayal had finally become rude because someone else named it. Mr. Callahan picked up his casserole dish from the sideboard. I think I should go, he said. Nobody stopped him. That is how exposure really works sometimes. Not with applause, not with sirens, just one decent person deciding they do not want their dish associated with your lie. Nadine gathered the papers we were not leaving behind. The ring stayed on the napkin until she placed it in a small evidence envelope, sealed it, and handed it to me. My father watched. That was your mother S., he said quietly. I held the envelope. Yes, I said, that is why I'm taking it. Evan followed me to the porch. What happens now? He asked. I looked at the man I had once promised forever to and felt the grief of it, but not the pull. Now you get your own lawyer. And us? There is no us that includes what you did. He looked toward the house, where Marissa was still crying loudly enough for the porch to hear. She'll fall apart. Even then, he expected me to measure the room by Marissa's ability to survive consequences. I said, then you can finally be the steady one. Nadine drove me home. I held the sealed envelope in my lap the whole way. That night, I slept for 3 hours and woke before dawn with my hand on my chest, feeling for something that was not there. For a second, I thought it was grief. Then I realized it was the old weight of waiting for someone else's reaction before deciding how I felt. It was gone. Not completely, nothing that old leaves cleanly. But enough. The weeks that followed were not glamorous. People love the moment of exposure because it feels like justice arrived all at once. But real life after betrayal is paperwork, phone calls, passwords, appointments, and waking up in a quiet house where even the silence has memories. I filed for divorce. The restaurant charge was reversed after Rebecca provided the authorization record. The joint account withdrawals became part of the divorce accounting. The bridge loan died quietly once my consent became unavailable. Mercer Row Holdings did not become the shining project Evan had described. Investors dislike instability when it is documented. Marissa did not marry him, at least not then. My father called me 7 times in the first month. I answered once. He said, I hate how far this has gone. I said, you mean you hate that it became visible? Then he said, your mother would hate this division. I looked at her scanned letter on my desk. Mom hated unfairness, I said. You just got used to calling it peace. He asked if we could have coffee. I said not yet. That was harder than I expected. Boundaries can feel like closing a door on a house that still has your childhood inside it. But I had spent too many years walking into rooms where love depended on my silence. I was done paying admission. One afternoon in January, after the first real snow of the season, I took my mother's ring to a small jeweler 2 towns over. I told him I did not want it resized, polished into something flashy, or made to look like an engagement ring anymore. I want to wear it, I said, but not as a wife, not as a daughter fighting for a place, just as something that came from my mother to me. 2 weeks later, he had set the ring onto a simple gold chain, preserving the band and stone, but letting it rest flat against the chest, like a small secret with nothing to prove. When he placed it in my hand, I smiled. That evening, I drove to the lake on the north side of town. My mother used to sit there in spring with coffee in a travel mug, watching ducks boss each other around near the reeds. The bench was cold, and the wind off the water cut through my coat, but I sat anyway. I fastened the necklace with numb fingers. The ring rested against my sweater, warm from my skin. For the first time, it did not feel like evidence. It felt like inheritance. Not the legal kind, though that mattered. The deeper kind. The kind where a woman who knew she was leaving reached forward as far as she could and gave her daughter one final instruction. Do not let them turn your softness into permission. I understand that sentence differently now. Softness was never the problem. My quiet was never the problem. My patience was never the problem. The problem was people mistaking those things for empty space they could build on. Evan thought a public proposal would trap me because I cared about dignity. My sister thought tears would protect her because they always had. My father thought family meant I would keep absorbing impact so he would not have to admit who he had sacrificed. They were all wrong about one thing. Dignity is not silence. Sometimes dignity is asking for the itemized bill. Sometimes it is printing the letter. Sometimes it is letting a stolen ring sit on a folded napkin until the person wearing it understands that tears do not transfer ownership. I lost a husband. I lost the version of my sister I kept hoping might someday choose me back. I lost the father I had been editing in my mind for years, cutting out the cruel parts so I could keep loving the rest without question. But I did not lose my mother's ring. I did not lose my house. I did not lose my name inside my own story. And that matters. Before you go, tell me this. If your family used something your mother left you to humiliate you, would you ever sit at their table again? And tell me your name and the city you're watching from. I want to know where this story found you.